Lilamrita. I'll just read from my computer. So, I mean, you're all welcome to stay, of course. More than welcome. But if anyone has things they need to do, that's also fine, of course. And one of the days, we will make some halava. Do you like the halava, or is it sort of, kind of like, well, so what? Too sweet. You're diabetic? Oh, you are? Wow. Really? I didn't know that. Okay. So, for everyone else? I mean, you don't need to just say nice things to be nice, but... Oh gosh. There are formulae, Oh yeah, it's a way of doing it. I mean, we could make something else, I suppose. I don't know. Okay, so devotees, we are starting Srila Prabhupada-ЛИЛАМРИТА Volume 4, which is titled In Every Town and Village Around the World from 1968 to 1971. And it begins, would you believe, in August 1968. Gosh, a whole lot of time has passed, because up till now, these first 3 volumes, it's been pretty, pretty step by step, very step by step. I'm just checking, when did we leave off? When did Prabhupada fly? October. Yeah, October. Oh, okay. No, it's later than that. It's December something. Huh? Well, yeah, I think you're right, yeah. So, all right. So, yeah, that sort of detailed description. So, yeah. 14th of December, 67. In the middle of the day, Prabhupada arrived in San Francisco. And now the next incident here is August 68. It's a shame because there's so much amazing detail. Actually, every day. Every day. Anyway, what to do? So this is now, it's actually in the whole book, if we look at the book as one whole, it's chapter 29. And in the book, there are 55 chapters. So in that sense, we are actually a little over halfway, you could say. So let's see how it goes. So chapter 29, unlimited opportunity, limited time.
Возможностей много, а времени нет.
Krishna Presta Bhutale.
Называется глава.
Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve. Gauravani Pracharne. Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadeshatarne. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpaturubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha. Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Okay, so Montreal, August 1968, so means 9 months have passed.
Август 1968 года.
Srila Prabhupada was in his room speaking with several disciples. So, Anapurna, you've got some news, he asked. Anapurna was a young British girl. A few months ago, her father had written from England that he might be able to provide a house if some devotees came there. Because the devotees didn't go to England till... I think it's... Anyway, we'll find out shortly, but I think in 69. Right, so Annapurna, you got some news, he asked. Yes, she replied. So what is our next program? She was reticent. That letter from your father is encouraging. Yes, he encourages me. But he says he can't provide any place if we come there. A few months before he said he might be able to, but now he says not. Prabhupada looked disappointed. That's all right. It's up to Krishna. When we go to someone to preach, we have to stand before them with folded hands, with all humility. My dear sir, please take to Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada, Prajumana spoke up. I was reading a book by this big atheist Swami. There's some letters in the back of the book and I was looking at them. Atheist Swami's book, Prabhupada said, we have nothing to do with. I wasn't looking at his philosophy, Prajumana explained. I was just looking at the techniques he used when he was in America.
Его философию я не читал,
оправдывался Prajumana.
Мне просто было интересно, какую тактику он избрал для Америки.
Anyway, I won't get into it, but he was a character. Right. He wanted to go to Europe, so he had a man, a rich benefactor, who went on a 6-week tour of France, England, Germany, Switzerland, Holland, and then back, arranging lectures. That's how he did most of his tour. He had 1 or 2 influential people, and they arranged everything. And the lectures were arranged, and the society. So, you can arrange like that, Prabhupada asked. I was thinking that there would be a Royal Asiatic Society in London. I think Thakur Bhaktivinoda was a member of that. But where is Thakur Bhaktivinoda Sangha Association? Prabhupada asked.
Но где санга самого
Well, Prajumana continued, still, there may be some people you could open correspondence with. They might be interested in sponsoring you.
Но все же можно поискать людей, с которыми вы могли бы
Is there anything about Krishna in that Swami's speech? Prabhupada asked. No. Prabhupada
с вами
sat
говорил
thoughtfully.
что-нибудь о Кришне? Спросил
In
Свами.
England, he would have no place to
Нет,
stay.
Прабхупада.
Prajumana might talk of
Бхактивиданта
influential
Свами
persons
задумался, он
traveling ahead
остановиться в Англии ему
and
будет
making all
негде.
the arrangements.
Про
But
Дюрна
where were
может
such
сколько угодно
persons?
разглагольствовать о
Here
влиятельных
was a shy
представителях, которые
girl
едут
who could barely
заранее,
speak
чтобы
up,
подготовить
whose
почву.
father would not help,
Да только где их
and
искать? Пока есть только одна
reading
робкая
an
девушка,
atheist
которая
Swami
даже рот боится
and
раскрыть.
talking of a
Да ее
royal
отец, который
Asiatic
не собирается
society,
им
but
помогать.
nothing
Да еще про
practical.
Дюрна, который читает книги своим
Prabhupada
Свами
had
атеиста и
plans,
толкует о королевском
He had
азиатском
asked
обществе.
Mukunda and
То есть ничего
Shamsundar to
реального.
go to London and try to
Но наступать
establish an
Бхактивиданта с
ISKCON
вами не собирался.
center.
Недавно он попросил Мукунду и Шамасундару отправиться в Лондон
They
и
had
попробовать
agreed
открыть там центр
and would be
ИСККОН.
traveling and would be
Они
arriving
согласились
in
и через
Montreal
несколько
from
дней
San
должны были
Francisco
приехать из
in
Сан-Франциско
a
в
few
Монреаль.
days. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Prabhupada's own
Шрила
spiritual
Бхактисиданта
master,
Сарасвати, духовный
had
учитель
wanted Krishna
Бхактивиданта Свами,
consciousness in Europe.
хотел, чтобы
During
сознание
the
Кришны распространилось по странам
1930s,
Европы.
he had sent his
Еще в
most
30-е годы
experienced
он
sannyasis
отправил
to
в Лондон
London,
своих самых
but they had
опытных проповедников
returned,
саньяси,
nothing
но
accomplished.
те вернулись с пустыми
It
руками.
wasn't possible to teach Krishna consciousness to the
Жалуясь на то, что
Malechas,
научить
they had
млечков
complained.
сознанию Кришны
Europeans
просто
couldn't sit long
невозможно.
enough to hear the Vaishnava philosophy.
У европейцев не хватило
One of the
терпения для того,
sannyasis
чтобы
had
высидеть
met
лекцию по
Lord
вайшнавской философии.
Zetland, who had
Один
inquired
из саньяси
curiously,
встретился с
Swamiji,
лордом Зетландом,
can you
который
make
с
me a
любопытством
Brahman?
спросил:
The sannyasi
Swamiji,
had,
а вы сможете
had
сделать меня
assured
браманом?
Lord Zetland he could,
Саньяси
certainly,
заверил лорда
if
Шетланда,
Zetland would give
что,
up
разумеется, может,
meat-eating,
но при условии, что
intoxication,
тот
gambling,
откажется
and
от
illicit
мяса,
sex.
одурманивающих средств,
Impossible, Lord
азартных игр и
Zetland had
незаконного
replied.
секса.
And the sannyasis had
Невозможно,
accepted this
воскликнул
response
лорд
as
Шетланд.
the standard for all
Саньяси решил, что
Europeans.
точно так же ответят и все остальные
The
европейцы,
sannyasis had
заключив,
returned to
что
India.
вайшнавизм никогда не приживется на
Vaishnavism could
Западе,
never
вернулся
take
в
hold
Индию.
in the West. Prabhupada had faith that his disciples would succeed.
Но
They
Прабхупада
would help
верил,
him
что его
establish
ученики
ISKCON
непременно
centers
добьются
in
успеха и
Europe,
помогут ему основать
just as
центры
they had
ИСККОН в
in
Европе.
North America.
Так же, как
Certainly
они
such
это сделали в
success would
Северной Америке.
greatly please
Безусловно,
Srila
успех
Bhaktisiddhanta
этот
Saraswati.
несказанно обрадует Шрилу Бхактисидданту
Prabhupada told
Сарасвати.
of a man who found a
Прабхупада
gourd
рассказал ученикам
lying on the
притчу о
road
человеке, который
and picked it
подобрал
up,
на дороге
and then
тыкву,
found a stick and a wire
а чуть
and
позже
picked
нашел
them up.
палку и струну.
In themselves, the three parts were
Сами по
useless,
себе
but by
кусок
putting the
проволоки, сами
gourd,
по себе
the
эти вещи были
stick, and the
бесполезны.
wire
Но
together,
соединив их
the
вместе,
man
человек
made
сделал
a
вину
veena
и заиграл на ней
and began
прекрасную
to play
музыку.
beautiful music. Similarly, Prabhupada had come to the West and found some
Подобным образом
rejected
Прабхупада
youths
приехал на
lying
Запад
here
и
and
обнаружил
there.
там
And he himself
отверженных
had
молодых
been
людей,
rejected by the
которые
people of New
лежали
York
там и
City.
сям, при том, что
But
и
by
он
Krishna's
сам
grace,
в Нью-Йорке
the
тоже никому не был нужен.
combination had
Но по
become
милости Кришны
successful.
их союз
If
оказался
his
удачным.
disciples remained sincere
Если его
and followed
ученики
his
сохранят
orders,
искренность
they
и
would
будут следовать его
succeed
указаниям,
in Europe.
в Европе его ждет.
3 married couples, Mukunda and Janaki,
Три молодые пары,
Shamsundar and
супружеские
Malati,
Мукунда и
with their
Джанаки,
infant
Шямасундара
daughter
и Малати,
Saraswati,
со своей маленькой
Who's
дочкой, грудной
now
дочкой Сарасвати, и Гуру
50
Дас
years
с
old.
Ямуной.
more than 50 years old.
Сейчас
And
ей
Guru
уже
Das
50,
and
больше даже
Yamuna
Малати, больше 50.
arrived in Montreal, eager to
Гуру
travel
Дас и
to
Ямуной
London.
приехали в Монреаль.
These 3 couples had
Горя
begun the
желанием
temple in
отправиться в
San
Лондон.
Francisco,
Эти
where they had
супружеские
had
пары
close
основали храм в
association with
Сан-Франциско, где
Srila
им довелось
Prabhupada.
близко общаться
They
со
had
Шрилой
helped
Прабхупадой.
Prabhupada introduce kirtan,
Они помогли ему
prasadam,
познакомить
and
с
Rathayatra
Киртаном,
among the
Прасадом и
hippies
Радхаятрой,
of Haight-Ashbury.
хиппи с Хейт-Эшбери.
Now they were eager to help him
А
introduce
теперь
Krishna
им не терпелось
consciousness
помочь
in
ему начать
London.
движение сознания Кришны в Лондоне.
Prabhupada asked the three couples to remain with him in Montreal for a week or two so that he could train them to perform kirtan expertly. Chanting Hare Krishna was not a theatrical performance, but an act of devotion, properly conducted only by pure devotees, not by professional musicians. Yet, if Prabhupada's disciples became proficient in their singing, Londoners would better appreciate Krishna consciousness. So, it's an interesting point. Prabhupada, like expertise, sophistication in music and so on. We'll say music particularly. Prabhupada didn't emphasize, but he really emphasized the sincerity, the devotion. But still, if devotees could become competent, then that was definitely a plus. Right. The thought of these devotees preaching in England made Prabhupada ecstatic. With their kirtan, they would become more popular than the yogis with their gymnastics and impersonal meditation. And in fact, that happened when the devotees were there. They would go out. Well, they were staying near the main street, near Oxford Street. First of all, in a small area called Covent Garden. And then they moved to Holborn, if you know London at all. And they would go, it was just a 5-minute walk to the main street, which is really quite a street. And they would go regularly and have Harinam down the main street. And George Harrison sometimes would drive past and see them. And he thought that these people, he was already interested in yoga and meditation, very interested and involved. But he thought these people are really sincere, particularly when he saw them during the winter, London's winter. It's very unpleasant, it's very damp. Very damp, and it's cold, sometimes snow. Not much snow, but sometimes snow. I mean, every year, a few times, they have snow. Right. As the London program became a tangible fact, Prabhupada began to reveal more plans. Prabhupada already seemed to have hundreds of detailed plans for implementing Krishna consciousness around the world. He only needed willing helpers. In the daily kirtan rehearsals, so they were rehearsing, practicing. Prabhupada taught the devotees to chant Hare Krishna and other devotional songs, beginning with a slow tempo and building gradually. He would regularly interrupt and have them begin again, listening carefully. As Yamuna led the chanting, Prabhupada would stop her at times to correct her Sanskrit pronunciation. After 2 weeks, so it's either August or September, after 2 weeks in Montreal, the London party came together for a final meeting with Prabhupada. He was sending them to start a center in London to fulfill his spiritual master's dream. The sannyasi Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had sent to London, Prabhupada told them, had lectured in a few places, posed for photos with lords and ladies, and then returned to India. But Prabhupada wanted his disciples to go out boldly, chant the holy name, and attract others to chant. Lord Chaitanya had personally used this method while touring South India. Chaitanya Charitamrita describes that whoever saw Lord Chaitanya became ecstatic in love of God. Then that ecstatic person would chant the holy name and ask others to chant, and when they saw that person, they too would become ecstatic. Thus the waves of ecstatic love of Krishna would increase. Prabhupada predicted that when the devotees chanted Hare Krishna, the people of London would hear the mantra, become devotees, and then enlighten others. Krishna consciousness would grow. The only requirement was that the chanting be done purely, without any material motivation. Prabhupada's enthusiasm was contagious. And as he spoke, he filled his disciples with the same contagious enthusiasm. When Mukunda asked Prabhupada if he had any specific instructions, Prabhupada replied with a story. In his youth, he had once seen a movie of Charlie Chaplin. The setting was a formal ball held outdoors, and off from the main dance arena were lanes with benches where couples sat. Some mischievous boys had plastered glue on one of the benches, and a young man and his girlfriend came and sat down. When the young man got up, Prabhupada laughed as he told the story. His tails tore up the middle. Prabhupada told how the couple had returned to the dance, unaware of what had happened. But now they drew stares from the other dancers, wondering why he was suddenly attracting so much attention. The young man went into the dressing room and saw in the mirror his ripped coattails. Deliberately, he then tore his coat all the way up to the collar, returned to his partner, and began dancing exuberantly. Then another man joined, ripping his own coattails and dancing with his partner as if to compete with the first couple. One by one the other dancers followed, ripping their coattails and dancing with abandon. By the conclusion of the story, the devotees in Prabhupada's room were all laughing uproariously, but finally their laughter subsided and the meeting ended. Yeah. Not until the devotees were already at the airport did Mukunda, talking with Shyamsundar, began to appreciate and marvel at how expertly Prabhupada had answered his question. By their bold, enthusiastic, confident preaching, they would attract people. Not everyone would immediately join in the dancing, as had the people in the Charlie Chaplin film. The devotees might even be considered crazy at first. But they would be offering Krishna consciousness, the highest and rarest gift. And intelligent people would gradually appreciate this, even if at first they scoffed. There's a story, not told by Prabhupada, but it's a story. It's just a story.
Есть
about
история,
Charlie
которую
Chaplin.
не рассказывал
Charlie
Прабхупада,
Chaplin
Да,
when
история
he made one of his movies
Чарли Чаплина.
for the premiere, the first night,
Когда
he
он
was there.
снял один из своих
And
фильмов,
Albert
он
Einstein
пришел на
came
премьеру своего
to the
фильма,
premiere
и
of
среди
the Charlie
зрителей на
Chaplin
премьеру этого
movie
фильма Чарли
and
Чаплина
met
пришел
Charlie
также
Chaplin.
Альберт Эйнштейн.
And they spoke
И
together.
они встретились на
And
премьере, и завязался разговор.
Charlie Chaplin told Albert Einstein that, you know, the people
Чарли Чаплин
really
сказал Альберту
appreciate me
Эйнштейну, что
because they understand
видите,
me.
люди
And they really appreciate you because they don't understand you.
люди действительно ценят меня, потому что они понимают
And
меня, и они
here,
также
how
очень
about this?
ценят высоко
That
вас,
Charlie
потому что они вас
Chaplin
совсем не
died.
понимают.
I don't know when he died. Was it Charlie? I think it was Charlie Chaplin.
И
Charlie Chaplin died.
И
Just see when Charlie Chaplin died. He was living in
можете
Geneva
посмотреть, когда Чарли Чаплин
by the Lake Geneva, it's a famous lake
умер. Он к тому
there.
времени жил
And
в Женеве, около Женевского озера.
really, 25th. Okay, yeah, then what I was thinking is correct, because I was told a devotee was going door to door
Что мне
in
сказали, что
Geneva, and he went out
преданные, они
around the
в
lake,
Женеве
because there's
распространяли
these
книги
big,
от дверей к дверям,
wealthy people, big
и в том числе
houses
и
around the lake. You know, it's
Женевского
very
озера, где большие
picturesque,
дома
and
богатых
Geneva
людей
is such a
находятся.
famous place. He was just going door to door, knocking on doors, and he knocked on the door,
Роскошное,
and Charlie
живописное
Chaplin
место.
came to
Они
the door
шли от одной квартиры к другой.
and told him that I'm Charlie
И когда они
Chaplin.
постучали в дверь, Чарли
And he
Чаплин
took,
вышел.
I forget what book it was, I think it was The Science of Self-Realization. But he took a book
И
and he
если
was
не
very
ошибаюсь, я
pleasant
не помню, какая книга, мне кажется, что он взял науку
with the
самосознания.
devotee.
И он
And
очень
then the
любезно
devotee,
отнесся к преданным.
same devotee, came back
И затем
maybe a year later or
тот же самый
even
преданный,
a
который
little
распространил
more.
книгу, он
And
пришел, возможно,
he
год
didn't,
спустя в то же
anyway,
самое
knocked on
место,
the
в ту же
door.
квартиру,
And
в тот же
Charlie
дом.
Chaplin's wife came to the
И он
door
постучал в дверь,
and she said, you know, my
и
husband
в
passed
этот раз
away.
вышла к дверям
And the devotee said,
жена.
well, you know, he took a book
Чарли
from me a
Чаплина,
while
и
ago. Do you know if he
сказал,
read it
знаете,
at
мой
all?
муж
And the lady, the
оставил
wife
этот
said,
мир.
yes, oh yes.
Вы знаете,
He
сказал
read it
преданный, он
and he
взял у
really
меня книгу,
appreciated it.
он читал ее,
Interesting.
и жена сказала, вы знаете, да, он читал ее, и
Right.
очень
Oh.
хорошо о ней отозвался, то есть она ему очень
By
понравилась.
Srila Prabhupada's order, his London-bound disciples, holding kirtan in public, would present a profile quite different from the reserved profile of his
Своей
sannyasi
смелой, вдохновленной,
godbrothers.
уверенной проповеди
His
они,
godbrothers had
несомненно, будут привлекать
imitated
людей,
the
но как
British
и в этой комедии
ways, but Prabhupada wanted the British to
В
imitate
отличие от
the
духовных братьев Бхактисиданта Свами с
Vaishnavas.
их мирной тактикой, ученики, следуя наказу духовного учителя, будут действовать
Some
совсем иначе.
godbrother of
Они будут
Prabhupada's,
устраивать в Лондоне
when
публичные
Prabhupada was
киртаны.
talking to him,
И
who had
если
been
духовные братья
to
Бхактисиданта Свами во
England
многом
and stayed there for
копировали
some
англичан,
couple of
то
few
сам он
years or
хотел, чтобы
whatever it
англичане
was,
начали подражать вайшнавам.
told
Один из
Prabhupada,
братьев
you
Боги,
know,
Шрила
you're
Прабхупада,
going to have to
который
learn
жил в Лондоне
how to
какое-то
eat
время,
with a
около
knife and
пару
fork.
лет. Когда узнал, что Шрила Прабхупада отправляется в
And
Лондон, он сказал, знаешь, тебе придется научиться
particularly
есть вилкой и
how to
ложкой,
deal
ножом.
with peas with a fork. Have you had much
То есть
experience?
особенно
It's a
надо
challenge.
научиться, как
Yeah,
ложкой,
but Prabhupada
вилкой и ножом, особенно
was not
когда
impressed.
дело касается горошка.
to appear in the streets of London with
Прабхупада, он как-то
shaven
не
heads and
проникся этим
dhotis
советом своим.
would require boldness, but it would be
Чтобы
exciting
появиться
to
на
chant,
улицах Лондона с обритой
carrying
головой в
out the
ходе
order
нужна была
of Lord
смелость.
Chaitanya.
Сама мысль о том, что
And the
они
people
будут
would
петь,
follow
выполняя
gradually,
наказ
but
Господа
definitely
Чайтаньи,
It was the
воодушевляло
will
ребят.
of Lord Chaitanya.
Люди последуют за ними
So I'll read a little
медленно,
more.
но верно, ибо такова воля Господа Чайтаньи. Я еще немножко прочитаю.
Srila Prabhupada's visit to Montreal took place early in the summer of
Визит
1968,
Бхактивиданты Свами в
6
Монреале
months
выпал на
after his
начало лета
return to America.
1968 года.
In India from
6
July to
месяцев спустя
December of
после его возвращения в Америку.
1967.
Живя в Индии с июля до декабря 1967 года,
He had recovered his health, and on December 14th he'd
он
returned to San
восстанавливал свое
Francisco.
здоровье, а
After a
14
few
декабря
weeks he had
вернулся в
gone to Los
Сан-Франциско.
Angeles, where a small group of
Пробыв там несколько
disciples
недель, Свами
had
же
opened a
отправился в
storefront
Лос-Анджелес,
temple
где небольшая
in a
группа
middle-class
учеников открыла
black
храм,
and
взяв в аренду
Hispanic
помещение
neighborhood.
магазинчика в квартале, где
The
жили
storefront
негры
was
и
bare
испанцы
and
среднего
the
достатка.
location secluded.
Магазинчик был пуст,
Prabhupada
а
had
сам
stayed
дом
there 2
стоял на
months,
отшибе.
delivering lectures, holding
Свами
kirtans,
же пробыл там
and
2
giving strength
месяца,
and
читал лекции,
inspiration to
проводил
his
киртаны,
disciples.
давая своим ученикам
Although a
силы
buzzing
и
in his
вселяя в них
head
вдохновение.
had made working difficult,
Шум в голове
he had
по-прежнему
found the
мешал
warm
ему
climate and
работать,
sunshine agreeable,
но в
and
теплом,
had continued to
солнечном
translate
климате Южной
Srimad Bhagavatam,
Калифорнии
dictating
он чувствовал
tapes
себя
and
превосходно и
sending them
продолжал
to
переводить
Boston for
Шримад Бхагаватам,
typing.
надиктовывать его
A
текст
reporter
на
from Life
магнитофонные ленты и
had come to
пересылал
Srila
их в
Prabhupada's
Бостон,
apartment
чтобы там
and
их
interviewed him for
перепечатали
an
на
upcoming
машинке.
Life feature, The Year of
Однажды
the
на
Guru.
квартиру к Бхактивиданте
When the
Свами
story had
пришел корреспондент
appeared,
журнала
it
Life,
had mixed
взял у
Srila
него интервью
Prabhupada
для
and his
очередного номера.
movement
Статья
with
называлась
coverage of
«Год
other
гуру».
gurus. Although
Вышедшая
the
статья
article had
представляла
carried a large color
Бхактивиданта Свами
photo
и
of
его
Srila
движение наряду
Prabhupada
с другими
and
гуру.
favorably
И хотя там была
described the
напечатана
reporter's
и его
visit
большая
to the
цветная фотография,
New
и
York
приводился
ISKCON
положительный
Center,
отзыв одного
Prabhupada had said
репортера
that
о
being grouped with
посещении Нью-Йоркского
gurus
центра
who
ИСККОН,
taught concoctions of yoga and
Свами же остался
meditation
недоволен тем, что
was
его
not
поместили
good.
в один ряд с
In
псевдогуру,
May,
которые
a few
учили
months after
вымышленным
leaving
формам
Los
йоги и
Angeles,
медитации.
Prabhupada had paid a
В
first
мае, через
visit
несколько месяцев
to his
после отъезда
ISKCON
с
center in
Лос-Анджелеса, Прабхупада
Boston.
впервые
There also
посетил
he had
центр
found a few
ИСККОН в
disciples
Бостоне,
based in a small
где несколько
storefront.
его учеников также
He had
обосновались
lectured at
в
many of the
помещении
local
бывшего
universities,
магазинчика.
including Harvard
Он
and
прочитал много
MIT.
лекций в местных
At
университетах,
MIT,
включая
addressing
Гарвард
a
и
gathering of students and
Массачусетский
faculty, he
технологический
had
институт,
challenged,
где,
where in this
обратившись к
university
аудитории,
is there a
состоявшей из
department to
студентов
teach
и преподавателей,
scientifically
бросил
the
вызов.
difference between a
Где
living
в этом
body and a
университете
dead
факультет,
body?
на котором
The
преподается
most
наука о
fundamental
различии живого
science,
и мертвого
the
тела.
science of the living soul,
Но, к сожалению,
was
эта
not
фундаментальная
being
наука,
taught.
наука о живой душе, здесь не
After
преподавалась.
Boston, Srila Prabhupada had come to Montreal.
После
And
Бостона
after 3
Шрила Прабхупада
months in
приехал в
Montreal,
Монреаль. И
Prabhupada flew
проведя
to
там 3
Seattle,
месяца,
where he
вылетел в
stayed for 1
Сиэтл,
month. Then he briefly
где
visited
пробыл
Santa
почти
Fe, New
месяц.
Mexico, where the
Затем он
ISKCON
нанес
Center was a
короткий визит в
tiny,
Санта-Фе, штат
isolated
Нью-Мексико, где центр
storefront.
ИСККОН располагался в
Prabhupada's
крошечном
reasons for
магазинчике в
traveling
одиноко
from center
стоящем
to
здании.
center were to train and
Чтобы учить
convince each
преданных, укреплять
disciple
их веру и
and to
знакомиться с
speak with
новыми людьми, Прабхупада
newcomers.
постоянно
Many
путешествовал из
young
центра в
people
центр, из
came to
города в
hear,
город.
but
На
Prabhupada
лекции его
found the
приходили толпы
majority
молодых людей, но
already
Прабхупада видел,
ruined
что жизнь
by
многих из
illicit
них уже
sex and
загублена
drugs.
беспорядочными половыми
They
связями и
were rich
наркотиками.
men's sons, quote unquote, but they had
Все они
become
были детьми
hippies,
из богатых
wandering
семей,
the
в
streets.
кавычках, но
By
теперь стали
Krishna's
хиппи,
grace,
бесцельно
now some of
слоняющимися
them
по
were
улицам.
being
По милости
saved.
Кришны, теперь некоторые из
Even while
них получили шанс
recuperating in
спастись.
India, Prabhupada had always thought of returning to America
Еще
to
в Индии
continue his
Прабхупада не
movement.
переставал думать о том, как
The,
вернуться в Америку и
the
продолжить
Indians had
начатое
seemed
дело.
interested only in sense gratification,
Индийцы,
like
казалось,
that of the
стремились только к одному,
Americans.
к
But
всевозможным
many American
удовольствиям,
youths,
которыми
disillusioned with their
американцы. Но
father's
многие
wealth,
молодые люди,
were not going to
разочаровавшиеся
the
в богатстве своих
skyscrapers
отцов,
or to their
вовсе не
father's
хотели жить в
businesses.
небоскребах или продолжать
As
отцовское
Prabhupada had seen
дело.
from his stay in New York City and San
Живя в
Francisco,
Нью-Йорке и Сан-Франциско, Прабхупада
thousands
видел
of
тысячи
youths
молодых
were
людей,
seeking an alternative
ищущих
to
альтернативу
materialism.
материальному.
Frustrated, they were ripe for spiritual knowledge.
Разочарованные в жизни,
The
они вполне были
devotees,
готовы
still
к тому,
neophytes,
чтобы воспринять
knew
духовное
nothing of
знание.
spiritual life
Его
and
ученики,
in most
только
cases,
начинавшие
very
свою
little
духовную
of
жизнь, ничего не
material
знали о
life.
духовной жизни, и
But because they
зачастую
were
очень
sincerely
мало
taken
знали
to
даже о
Krishna
материальной
consciousness,
жизни. Но поскольку
Prabhupada
они
was
искренне
confident that
приняли
their
сознание Кришны,
shortcomings would not
Бхактивиданта
prevent their
Свами был
spiritual
убежден, что
progress.
недостатки не помешают их
Although
духовному росту.
naturally beautiful, these Western youths were
Красивые
now
от природы,
dirty and
сейчас эти
morose.
американские
Their
юноши и
beauty had
девушки
become
были
covered.
грязны и угрюмы.
But the chanting of Hare
Однако мантра
Krishna
Хари Кришна
was reviving
постепенно
them,
возвращала их к
Prabhupada
жизни,
said.
подобно тому, как дожди возвращают
Just as
жизни
the
землю
monsoon
Вриндавана.
revives the land of Vrindavan, making it fresh and verdant. And as the
Одевая ее
Vrindavan
покровом
peacocks sometimes
свежести
dance
Вриндавана.
jubilantly, so
И
the
подобно
devotees,
павлинам
having shed their
Вриндавана, которые порой
material
танцуют,
bonds,
охваченные
were
восторгом,
now
преданные,
ecstatically
освободившись от оков
dancing and
материи,
chanting the holy
в
name.
экстазе танцуют и поют
When a
святые имена.
reporter asked Prabhupada if his
Когда
disciples were
один корреспондент
hippies,
спросил у Прабхупады,
Prabhupada
являются ли
replied,
его ученики
"No,
хиппи,
we are not hippies.
Прабхупада
We are
ответил, нет,
happies."
они не хиппи.
More than a
happy.
visiting lecturer or a formal guide, Srila Prabhupada was the
Прабхупада был не
spiritual
просто лектором или
father
официальным
of his
наставником, он был
disciples.
духовным отцом
They
своих
accepted
учеников.
him as their real father,
Они
and
считали
he
его
found them
своим
devoted and
настоящим
affectionate
отцом.
far
Он
more
видел, что они
than his
преданы
own
ему и
family
любят его
had
гораздо
been.
больше, чем
These young
кровные
American boys and
родственники.
girls, the flower of your country,
Эти молодые
Prabhupada
американцы,
called them,
цвет нации,
had
как
received the
называл их
blessings of
Прабхупада,
Lord Chaitanya and were
удостоились
delivering
благословения
that
Господа
blessing to their
Чайтаньи
countrymen.
и несли его.
Prabhupada said it was up
Своим
to his American
соотечественникам.
disciples to save their
Прабхупада говорил
country,
своим
He was
ученикам,
giving
что
them the
именно от них
method,
зависит спасение
but
их
they would
страны.
have to implement.
Он дал им метод, но
Srila
применить его
Prabhupada
они
loved
должны были
his
сами.
disciples and they loved him.
Шрила Прабхупада любил
Out of
своих
love,
учеников,
he
а
was
они
giving
любили
them the
его.
greatest treasure,
Из любви к ним он
and
дарил
out
им
of
величайшее
love,
сокровище,
they were following his
а они из
instruction.
любви к нему следовали
This
его
was the
наставлениям.
essence of spiritual life.
В этом
On
и
the basis
заключается
of this
сущность
love,
духовной жизни.
the Krishna
На
consciousness
почве
movement
этой
would
любви
grow.
будет расти
Not
движение сознания Кришны.
surprisingly, some disciples had fallen
Некоторые
away
из его
to their
учеников
former materialistic way
пали,
of living.
вернувшись к прежнему образу жизни, но
But
Прабхупада
Prabhupada
искал
sought
те
those
искренние души,
sincere
которые
souls
останутся с
who
ним
would
до
stay.
конца. И это
That
не
was
было
the
для него
important thing, he
неожиданностью.
said. One moon is
Это
more
самое
valuable
главное, говорил
than
он.
many
Одна луна
stars.
затмевает множество
So even a
звезд на
few
небосклоне.
sincere
Подобно
workers
этому,
could accomplish
даже
wonderful
горстка
things.
искренних преданных
The
может
sincere
совершить
and
чудеса.
intelligent would stay, and Lord Chaitanya
Искренние и
Mahaprabhu
разумные
would empower
останутся.
them
И
to
Господь
carry out
Чайтанья
his
Махапрабху
desires
даст им
for
силы
distributing
исполнить
love
его
of
желание.
Krishna. In this way, the
Принести миру
devotees'
любовь
lives
к
would
Кришне.
become perfect.
Идя этим
Many
путем, преданные
disciples, in
достигнут
fact,
совершенства.
already felt this
Многие
happening.
ученики чувствовали, что
Krishna
это происходит
consciousness
уже
worked
сейчас.
because they
Сознание
sincerely
Кришны приносило
practiced it.
плоды, потому что
And because Srila
они относились к
Prabhupada
духовной практике
carefully
искренне.
and
Прабхупада
patiently
заботливо и
tended
терпеливо
the
ухаживал за
growing
ростками любовного служения
plants
Кришны,
of transcendental loving service he had planted in their hearts.
которые он
Hare
посадил в их
Krishna.
сердцах.
Шрила Прабхупада ki jai. Any comment or question? Mataji, or just a moment.
Вопросы или комментарии, возможно, есть.
Give it to Mother Rangadevi.
Дайте
Hare
матушке
Krishna.
Рангадеви.
We see that in London and in America
Харе Кришна Махарадж, мы
nowadays
видим,
that
что в
it's
Лондоне
mostly
и в Америке
Indian population that's actually taking up to Krishna consciousness and filling the temples and doing the pujari
индийская
work,
диаспора в большей
service
степени
and all of those
принимает
things.
сознание Кришны, и
I'm just
пуджариями
wondering,
становятся люди,
is
и
there
приходят
maybe
на
another
праздники.
approach to preaching in
Я хотела бы знать,
those areas now? Or?
Yeah, okay, that's a good point.
может быть, теперь другой
it's true,
какой-то
it's very
есть
true.
подход, как проповеди в
You know,
этих
the hippie
странах.
movement
Да, это важный
basically
момент, и я
died
должен сказать, что
quite some
это
time
действительно
ago.
так.
because, you know,
Само движение
90%
хиппи, оно
plus
просто
of these young people being
прекратило существовать,
described here
погибло.
who
Потому что
became
80%
devotees, they were hippies or something to do with hippies. You know, you got a few like Jayananda Prabhu. He was like a really solid and, you know, sort of older 30 or 32-year-old young man, and he became a devotee, but not many of that sort. So, yeah, but now in America particularly, they're sort of leading the way of developing. I mean, you know, there's a report from the American Yatra I've got somewhere just from a couple of months ago. It's really amazing things that are going on. But one of the main, probably the main thing is, they're really, really working on developing book distribution again. Because the book distribution, which was the main way that people were becoming interested, hippies or whoever they were, including the hippies, was book distribution. And Prabhupada emphasized that. But it really dropped off drastically. Since, you know, I think it's like after the mid-80s, but they're really developing book distribution in a big way. And as a result, more locals are becoming devotees. And some are joining the temples, but, you know, it's more like through Bhakti Vriksha and Namahata. People, Americans, are becoming devotees at home. So, you know, of course, back in those days, these days, the days when Prabhupada was present, there were very few Indian people. In England there were, and they were into it. Although we were mainly preaching to the local English people. But in America there were very few Indian people. But now America is, what would you call it? And anyway, it's the place for the Indian people to go, the qualified Indian people. And there's quite a few million of them there. If I mean, it obviously can be checked on the internet, but I believe there's several million. Yeah. So it's a lot. And yeah, many of them are into it. Very many. So I would say, and not just I would say, but it's happening step by step, that the preaching to the local people is developing. But you get like in Russia, of course in Russia, other than Moscow, and even Moscow there's not a lot of Indian people, but other than Moscow, you don't get Indians in Russia. St. Petersburg, there's a few, and there's a couple of places where you get some, where there's universities specializing in medicine. A lot of Indian students come. I mean, not a lot really, but some. Otherwise, there's not an Indian if you travel. But people are becoming devotees in Russia, and they're local people. Yeah, in a big way. I was talking, I mean, still, it's been going on for years. I was speaking to someone yesterday or the day before. Oh yeah, yesterday. No, what? On Friday. My Russian teacher, he was talking about this, how in Russia, you know, there's so many people becoming devotees, But Prabhupada's
Столько много людей
disciples
становятся преданными.
are not going to Russia because of COVID. Very few, or
Но сейчас
basically
даже ученики
none.
Прабхупады, они не ездят в Россию.
So
потому что
in
никто не
Russia,
может попасть.
there's only
Никто,
2 Russian
фактически.
gurus. And he was saying, it's such
В
a
самой
problem.
России всего 2
So
русских
many
гуру.
devotees, so many people becoming
И
devotees.
они говорят, это
And
такая
after a
проблема,
while,
столько много
they
людей
want to
становятся
become
преданными.
initiated. But who's going to
И они
initiate
хотят
them?
получить инициации.
So they want
Ну, их
more
некому
of the
инициировать.
local Russians to be allowed to initiate. Yeah, so it's not,
Поэтому они просят, чтобы было
like a
разрешение
universal thing
местным преданным
where
инициировать.
there's a lot of Indian
Это
people,
я бы не сказал, что такое
America, England, there has
универсальный
been a
такой
lot for
принцип.
many years. They came
Там, где
from
много
Kenya and
и
Uganda,
индийцев, и они
So many.
приезжали оттуда
hundreds of thousands. Yeah, I'd say hundreds of
из разных
thousands.
стран, например, из Кении, из
And
Уганды.
there's still people
Сотни
coming
тысяч.
from India.
И еще приезжают люди из Индии.
And, you
по-прежнему.
can't stop them coming. What are we going to
И
do?
остановить вы их не сможете.
I remember
Что мы можем
back
сделать?
in Joburg, we had our temple in Muldersdrift, just outside Joburg.
Я помню, что в
And
Йогансбурге
The government people, the apartheid government people came because we were
приехали
in a
люди из
white area
правительства,
and we had
потому что мы проповедовали
non-whites.
в белой части.
I mean, we had a real mixed crowd
А среди
actually,
нас были не
but there were
белые.
it was probably
У нас
50%
действительно была
Indian
такая,
and some white and some African and
может быть,
others.
50%
So
индийцев
they
было,
came
может быть, несколько африканцев
and
было и белые. И вот
and
правительственные представители
prosecuted
правительства
us
пришли
for
к нам,
breaking the laws. Yeah,
и они
yes.
нас наказали за
And
нарушение
there
закона.
was a case. They came to the temple and had the case there, and we lost the case. But we appealed.
И они
In the meantime, they told us that if we lose, they're not going to
подали на
fine
нас в
us
суд,
yet.
и мы проиграли
But if we
этот
lose the
процесс.
appeal,
И
we'll
мы
have to pay
затем
500
подали
rands a day.
апелляцию, но нам сказали,
Which in those
если
days,
мы
I mean,
проиграем,
500
этой
rands is
апелляции
500
будет
rands, but in
отклонена,
those days it was worth a lot more.
500 рантов
So we
в
called
день
a
должны
meeting
были платить штраф.
of the congregation.
Сейчас это меньше, тогда это было
You know,
больше. Мы
there's not a
собрали
lot of them.
тогда
There's
всю
like
свою общину.
50 or 60, I suppose, who came regularly. About half of them were
Не так много
Indian.
было их, но может быть
And we said
50-60
to them,
человек.
this is the situation.
Половина из них была
Would you mind
индийцы.
not
И мы
coming?
сказали, вот смотрите, ситуация такова.
And wow,
Вы не против, если вы не будете
they
приходить
were just
сюда?
so not happy. They were really upset.
И они
So
так
we
были
didn't know what to do.
расстроены. Они были так рассержены, расстроены.
So then the
и мы вообще
date
не
for
знали,
the
что делать.
appeal was coming up. But then you know what
Затем
happened?
пришла дата, когда нашу апелляцию должны были рассмотреть. И
Apartheid
знаете, что произошло?
was given up. Yeah,
Апартеид
that's what happened.
сдался.
And these people
Представляете?
never contacted us again. They didn't contact us
И
to
эти
say,
люди больше
okay,
никогда к нам
we're
не
dropping the
приходили.
case.
Они не
We
связывались
just
даже с
didn't
нами.
hear from them again. Yeah.
Мы вообще
So,
просто они даже не знали, куда они
You know,
делись.
wherever there's pious Hindu people, they're going to come. They're definitely going to come.
Везде, где есть благочестивые
get
индийские
into it,
люди, они
and
обязательно будут приходить.
Many of them will
Обязательно.
become devotees.
Они будут вовлекаться в преданное служение, и многие из них будут
And
становиться
so,
преданными. Это всегда будет.
You know, like here for many years, we were, you could say, almost only dealing with the Indian communities. because there were only so many of us,
Как здесь, в течение
and
многих
there
лет
was
мы
so
вот,
much
в
preaching
основном
to do,
взаимодействуем с индийской общиной, и потому что
and as a result, the other
очень много
communities got neglected.
преданных из этой общины, и они столько
So, you know, in a sense, we don't really care
служение, столько
who,
проповедей
what
за
sort
это.
of people they are,
На самом деле мы
as long as they're interested.
не
if
очень
they're interested,
задумываемся о том,
we're interested in them.
откуда люди, какое
Yeah.
происхождение.
So it's
Главное,
kind of
чтобы
like
им
that in
было-
America, you know.
чтобы у них был живой
So many,
интерес, они были
virtually
серьезно заинтересованы в сознании
Of the
Кришны.
temple
И в
devotees
Америке,
got married and left the temple.
можно сказать,
So as a result, the temples were and are basically empty.
храм.
And then along come
И,
these interested
естественно, храмы
people,
опустели. Практически.
expatriates, you know, they're all coming directly
Когда
from
появились
India,
вот эти
and they're all intelligent, you know, they're all graduates,
экспатриоты,
all of them.
разумные,
They're all
которые приехали
graduates,
из
and
Индии,
they're really
которые были
intelligent,
образованы,
qualified people, and they're really interested, and many of them become devotees.
разумные, квалифицированные,
And so the
серьезно настроенные очень.
the devotees
И многие из них стали преданными.
Just got caught up in dealing with them. But now they're making like a focused effort to develop the book distribution and the preaching in the broader communities.
Для того, чтобы развить
Can you take the mic from her?
распространение
Any
книг.
other comment or question? No,
Могли бы передать
What's wrong?
микрофон, пожалуйста, еще
not feeling well
вопросы. Нет больше комментариев, вопросов?
to anything.
That you spoke about.
Well, what is it?
One of our Krishna kids' children in Santon asked a question about dinosaurs that you answered, but I can't remember the second answer you gave, and more children keep asking me.
You mean where they went to? Or?
Дети
where
спрашивают
they
нас вопрос,
came
задают,
from. You
продолжают по поводу
mentioned from the
динозавров.
churning
Вы
of
ответили?
the ocean
Вы
Oh,
when they were
the
getting
ocean of
yes, and it
milk.
was that war with the demons and the demigods.
Yeah, yeah.
But you
Вы
gave two
говорили,
answers,
что-
and I don't remember.
Neither do I.
Динозавры появились из океанов, которые пахтали демоны.
I guess they came from the. So many species came from the churning of the ocean of milk, and so many
Столько много
species came,
разновидностей форм
from,
жизни явилось во
you
время
know,
пахтания
like
молочного
the
океана.
daughters of Daksha, the daughters of Manu, who we've
Дети,
been
дочери
reading
Дакши.
about.
Дочери Ману,
Yeah,
мы читали о них.
I can't remember what I said.
Or
Anyway, sorry.
that's okay.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you.
Yes.
Извините, я не помню в этом в связи, что я сказал.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. You mentioned Prabhupada going to Harvard
Харе Кришна Махарадж.
and preaching there.
Going where?
Вы
Harvard.
говорили о том, что
Oh,
Прабхупад
Harvard, right.
проповедовал в Гарварде.
And I was just wondering, how successful was he, especially in the higher universities, so to speak? Because I mean, as you said, 90% plus of the of the ISKCON devotees were hippies.
Yeah.
Мне интересно, насколько успешно
I
была
don't think
проповедь в университетах,
many
особенно
of them
вот в
became
Гарварде,
devotees.
поскольку вы сказали,
Some
что в
of them
основном
did,
были
but I don't think many of them
хиппи только
became
становились
devotees.
преданными в основном. Но я думаю, что и обязательно кто-то из студентов Гарварда стали преданными. Может быть, не
Yeah.
многие, но кто-то
But,
определенно
we
стал.
read about, I don't know if you were here actually, we read about Prabhupada visiting Stanford,
Были ли вы здесь?
which
Вы
is also
читали,
one of the better
как Прабхупада
universities.
проповедовал в
Maybe not
Стэнфорде,
quite
который является
Harvard,
тоже
but
одним
it's,
из
you know,
таких звездных
it's one
университетов.
of the
Может быть,
much
не
better
такого
ones.
уровня, как Гарвард,
And the students loved it.
но это один из лучших
They danced
вузов.
madly
И
in the kirtan
студенты
for an hour.
танцевали, им так понравилось.
But as
Они
far as
танцевали
becoming
безумно на киртане
devotees,
где-то в течение
Not
часа.
so many became
Но то, что
devotees.
касается, сколько из них,
Although
просто сколько
Шрила
из них стали
Prabhupada did make the
преданными,
point
думаю, что немногие.
That
Хотя Прабхупада отметил,
graduates, educated people would make good leaders of the movement. So he appreciated the preaching to the university students, the more intelligent young people. But I'm not aware of a lot of them becoming devotees, but a lot of hippies became devotees. Really a lot.
И я не уверен, что многие из них стали из этих студентов преданными, но из хиппи действительно очень много.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Шрила Прабхупада ки джай.
Харе Кришна всем. Шрила Прабхупада ки джай.
Temple meet opened, but I don't know.